Hello, 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 hello. Thank you all for joining us. We still have some people trickling in. And as we do that, I just want to introduce myself and our awesome guest today. So, if you don't know, I'm Nicholas. I run Pictor. I'm the founder and creative director over there, product owner, and I also run a photo booth company. So, today I'm going to be talking with Catalina Bloch. She's one of the biggest names in the photo booth world. That's probably why a lot of you are here today. She runs her own photo booth business and she teaches other people how to do it as well. Today, we're going to talk about what the difference is when someone charges $500 for an event versus someone who charges $5,000. If you want to make more money with your photo booth, stick around. And Catalina, thanks for being here. Let's bring you to the stage. Hey,
Hi,
Kat, how
how's
you
it
doing?
going? I'm
Great.
doing good.
Where are you calling in from today?
I'm at home in Ottawa, snowy Canada.
Gotcha. We had our first snow here in New York City just a few weeks ago, or just a few days ago rather, and it
I
was
was
really
there
fun.
for it. It was
Ah,
beautiful.
nice. Cool. Before I get you to tell people what you were in town for, I always like to say the photo booth industry is not really a place that people as children expect to land. So, in a silly way, I always like to ask, how did you get from essentially from being born to running a seven-figure, six-figure, how many figure photo booth company?
A seven-figure photo booth company. Yeah. I just want to make sure everyone can hear us.
Yeah, let me check the chat. I can hear you.
Okay.
We got some thumbs up. Cool.
Okay, good. Okay. So, how did I get born to doing a photo booth? Well, interesting. You know that viral Instagram thing that's going on where it's like people are like, someone's going to tell you to do something and it's very important that you do that. I just wrote mine last night and it's like a psychic is going to tell you to go to Las Vegas and it's very important that you do that. So, I guess I was always into photography, always creative, was one of those people that said, I will not die in the corporate office. And then, of course, went on to live 14 years in a corporate office in nothing other than the insurance industry. So, like, I feel like it was, I couldn't get more corporate than that.
But
And
alas, you did not die, so you're still
I
ahead of
didn't
your
die,
fun. Yeah.
no. I did find some good success in there, and I learned a lot from the corporate world, which I was able to transfer over to the photo booth world. Uh, but the whole time I always had a side hustle of something creative and photography was a big part of it. And my goal was to do photography full time. So I was super broke because even though we were like both my husband and I worked, we just bought a house, living the paycheck to paycheck life of never being able to get more than what your paycheck says. And we'd just gotten married. So, like, we did not have a lot of disposable income and we did have a lot of debt. And so I was like, okay, I want to eventually be my own boss fully. And I thought wedding photography was going to do that. Turns out I hate wedding photography. It's long, it's exhausting at the wedding and after the wedding. And it's really hard to make money at it because, anyways, it takes years to do it. That's a whole other story. But there was WPPI, and I desperately wanted to go and learn from these great photographers that had been successful at it because I'm like, I'm clearly missing something. Maybe it's where I live. Maybe it's, all this other stuff that I was making up all these excuses in my head. So I'm like, I'm going to go learn from them. I got a free pass to the trade show floor because I knew that certain people I wanted to see. So I got into the trade show floor. I couldn't afford a full ticket because the tickets were like $300 or $400 to get into like the master classes and the keynotes. But I knew that there were some key photographers that were doing talks on the floor. So we got the pass. I went with two of my friends and we shared a room at Excalibur, which was $60 a night. And there was only two beds, but there was three of us. So it was a very interesting trip. But that's where I saw Photo Booth Supply Co.'s booth and jumped into their photo booth. And I was like, something clicked. Like it didn't
Yeah, a
leave
little
my
eureka
head.
moment.
Yeah, it was that was the moment. Like when you look back in life and you're like, this was a pivotal moment in my life where my life fundamentally changed and I had no idea. That was it. And called my husband, told him this crazy idea. And I told him, I'm like, I want to buy this $9,000 photo booth because I can see this working. He's like, we don't have $9,000. I'm like, no, but I have my parents' emergency American Express card and I have 30 days to figure this one out.
And it's an
Anyways,
emergency. It must have photo booth
for
emergency.
yeah, for emergencies only. This was an emergency. It was not. But either way, the rest is kind of history, but that's how I got my start. But the funny thing was is that I did go to this psychic because I was going with my mom. My mom really wanted to go to the psychic because my dad had passed like earlier that year and she wanted to, I don't know, talk to him or something. But instead, the psychic was like, you need to go to Vegas. She's like, I see you on TV. And I'm like, oh, she actually told me I was going to do a cooking show. And I was like, definitely nobody wants to learn how to cook from me because that is not accurate. But she was close in many things, just not cooking.
So similarly, I kind of ended up in the photo booth industry because I was a photographer, traveling music photographer, event photographer, similarly trying to figure out how to make a living. The way I figured out was I could control the budgets by literally throwing events in the city. So I started top down. And then as the aughts continued and then to the early 2010s, people really got tight on their purse strings for paying photographers. But ironically, they would pay me to put a iPad on a stick and send it to an event without myself. So that was kind of my foray into the industry. And also for me, as someone throwing events, I wanted those email addresses so I could send emails out. At a point, our event production company, which is probably different than the way you all think of event production companies. So we were more of a promo company. We'd rent out a club, we would bring in a DJ or we'd bring in a musician, but we needed to sell tickets. So we were using the photo booth as a data capture tool, really. So people were sharing on socials, people were giving us their email addresses, and our email list grew to several 100,000 very quickly now.
That's amazing.
Cool. So a little housekeeping again. We have a chat where you can ask questions. Kat and I are going to talk for a bit and then we'll open up to questions at the end. If you have questions throughout this, please drop them in the chat and we'll circle back as we get closer to the end of the hour. So let's dive in. Kat, you built a really successful photo booth business, and you also teach other people. Aren't you worried that teaching them, you're going to give away your special sauce?
No. I've actually learned this, I've had hundreds of students that I've either worked with in a group setting or one-on-one, many of them in my city. No, I mean, we all have access to the same tools. A camera is a camera, right? There's millions of photographers. It's what you do with it. It's how you pitch it. It's, something as simple as, I mean, we see this every day. A photo booth that can print and capture email is going to be used very differently from one person to the other. And I was able to carve out my own little piece of the event world using the same photo booth that everybody had back then because there wasn't that many options, right?
Hmm.
And so I don't feel that teaching people how to do these things creates the same competition. But what it does is it does elevate the entire industry because the biggest thing that we lack, and especially when I was coming up in the ranks, was that education. Everyone was a gatekeeper. You could not get people to give you information nicely ever, like it was very standoffish. And so I ended up having to go to other industries to be able to do any type of coaching. And I just feel like that's why most of the photo booth industry is a race to the bottom because we didn't have that, you know, rising tide rises all boats or whatever that thing is that the photographers did, And so now we have photographers that are making multi-million dollars or teaching other people, and that entire industry as a whole, we've already seen it elevate. And I feel like the photo booth industry is missing that.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a lot of things that I really agree with you. The rising tide raises all ships. We are a photo booth company. We're launching and literally licensing the software that is making our company successful for the same reason. We want other people to have the same success. And also, I think you said people are going to use all these tools completely differently. The other thing is, in order for any of these things that we talk about today to work, people actually have to get off their butts and do them, which I find is the number one holdback from being $1 million company is you just have to do the work. Obviously, that's an oversimplification.
It's not really though. The students who have seen success and I see a couple of your names in here are the ones that did the work and they saw the results of it for doing the work. Watching the
Yeah,
video doesn't help you. You got to go out and do it.
yeah, totally. And it's like, in the States, early COVID, I remember a lot of my cohort of people who had worked in nightlife in all different areas, bartenders, promoters, all the different things. And we're all sitting around freaking out. And I literally went across the street to the supermarket and was like, do you have a job application? I don't know what's happening. Right. And
Mm.
so ultimately, we're all kind of responsible for our own success. And I do like sharing as much of it as I can with folks. What was like the eureka moment? You talked about the eureka moment where you had that emergency and needed the family credit card, but what was the eureka moment where you were like, I need to start teaching people this stuff? You talked a little bit about the greater concept, but was there like a real like clicking point where you're like, if I do this,
I mean, I think I always it kinda happened organically. I was really engaged in the Facebook group, like the Photo Booth Supply Co. Facebook group, and
Mhm.
every time I would because back then, it was using Social Booth, which to this day I think is one of the worst softwares that we've ever had in the photo booth industry from back then at least, and there was no support, right? And so I learned a lot from the Facebook group, and every time I figured something out, I would also put it in the Facebook group, and I just started recording these real terrible videos. Like, if you go back and look at some of my videos, like, they're so bad. And then Brandon reached out to me one day and he's like, "You built a six-figure photo booth business in a year. Like, how did you do that?" And he's like, "I want you to share your story." And so that was the first educational content that I did about maybe 2 years into my career, and it was called 6 Steps to Six Figures with some of the worst graphics known to mankind. I think it still exists somewhere. And then people just started coming to me with questions, and I just helped them where I could because some people had started helping me too. And I just kind of started seeing a shift. And I said, well, I can be the change that I wanted to see. And I spent a lot of years just sharing my experience and helping other people. And I did it for as long as I could on my own. And then at one point I was like, I can keep doing this, but to the detriment of my own company and to my own sanity at this point, because I want to help everyone. And so it meant I had to scale a team. And so that's really when I was like, okay, we need to do this in deliver better, more structured education that's easy to digest, that literally hands everything over, but not just the step-by-step workflow, but fundamentally understanding how to sell something and also, like, how to use it in your business, right? Because I can teach someone how to make a keychain booth, but if they don't understand how to add it to their packages, then they could just be adding it for free and losing money.
Totally. And a question for you too, like on the insurance side, were you working in sales or what aspect of insurance were you working in?
I started in underwriting, so commercial vehicle underwriting, and then I moved my way I know, right? So exciting. The first couple of years weren't super exciting, but then I eventually moved into business development on the broker side of things, and that's when my job got pretty interesting. I started working on some really cool accounts, and like I got to do some insurance for an astronaut and for like really massive projects that were happening in our city, and I got to write my own insurance policy for photographers. So that yeah, that part was interesting. And then I moved up from there and went into the business development, which is more so corporate sales, and actually was top in Canada for the entire brokerage for a few
Yep.
years because I hated insurance sales and I was like, well, I'm not going to be one of these sleazy people. I'm just going to do it my way and let's see how it works. It worked. So
Yeah.
I learned a ton from that, right? Because a lot of what I did was sponsorship, marketing, events. And so a lot of the stuff that I took from there, I was able to funnel into my photo booth business later on.
Right.
And
Cool.
I started off by doing a lot of insurance events, actually.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
um, something it's like related to what you were saying a moment ago, and I should have interjected, but I didn't. I was at a dinner last night, and people were talking about community. And in order to have community, you have to essentially have this like blind faith and just be community yourself, and then start attracting kind of the molecules around you. And I think that's what you were describing with the Facebook group. And it was just a really good reminder, like in a very simple, like concise, like to be a part of a community, you must act as part of the community, kind of just like the golden rule. But I think it's really important for people to sit with that for a moment and be like, oh, do I have community around me? If I start presenting the type of community that I would like to be a part of, people will find you, especially with the internet. The internet has a bunch of downsides, but that is one of the good sides. It's easy to build community if you're genuine about it.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Cool. So I threw a poll in the chat asking folks sort of the split between corporate and private events of the listeners here today. In the industry, I feel like private events is sort of like a nasty word. Like everyone's like, oh, I want to do corporate events. I want to do corporate events. And I think um, I'm curious for you, straight up, is like, is the difference between a 500 and a $5,000 event, whether it's private or corporate, for you and your business?
No, absolutely not. I mean,
Same,
we still do private events, weddings and private anything that's like a person event, like a birthday party. Not that we do many birthday parties, but let's call it weddings. Those same pricing. Like
same.
we have the same prices. So I when I started figuring like scaling my business, I needed to figure out a way to simplify our pricing. And so what I now built, which is what I teach, is what I call the anchor method of pricing, meaning that our base, like so every print booth, gift booth, lenticular, keychain booth, whatever it is, starts with a digital booth, right? So that's our
Mhm.
anchor. And then we build up from there. So a wedding package will have our digital booth, and then we build up what that package will have, which would be, prints, digital sharing, and maybe they have personalized screens, not totally custom, but maybe we put their name on it. 9 times out of 10, most of our weddings actually have our branding on it because they don't care. They don't care what the screen says, they just care about having their monogram on the photo. Whereas on a corporate, we'll have our digital, then we'll put our add-ons, which would be very similar to the wedding package, and then we add branding, and then we'll add data collection, and that's where the prices start to become different. But if a wedding were to hire the most basic digital booth with nothing but our anchor price and a corporate, same thing, they would actually pay the same amount in that
Same,
case. It's the
same,
same amount of work.
same, if not more sometimes.
Oh my god.
I always break it down. I counted one time, our average, like, we had a bride who could not decide between a plus side, an ampersand, and the word
Yes.
"and" in small letters or normal letters
Yeah.
between her and her husband to be's name, and we did 70 emails on it
Yeah.
before shutting it down. I'll get an email from Netflix and it's like, "Yo, are you available on this date? Can we run that same thing we did last time with these graphics?" Cool. Here's money, and I show up. It's like that's kind of the difference. One of the other like core differences is like the person at Netflix or the corporate client, they are an expert and they know how
Yes.
to run an event. For a bride or groom, this is likely the biggest and first event they've ever thrown in their lives, and they're really putting the attention in the wrong place, as we've seen. So
Mhm.
really, I liked how you laid that out, and we're very similar. And the amount of times I've had to explain to a nonprofit that's like, no, there's no nonprofit pricing because literally we price these at the price where we can deliver the services you expect and deserve. We'll help you get sponsorship. We'll give you like some decks to use, but no, the pricing is the pricing. You pulled out two very important things on the corporate side. And just to give people an idea of what those two line items you mentioned are worth to a corporate event, what do you charge, if you feel comfortable sharing, for adding branding for a corporate event?
So I gotta pull up my pricing sheet here, but, there's different levels, so everything
Sure.
has, an amount, but for example, if I were to, just do the screens, for example, let me just take a look here. The screens, assuming we're using Breeze in this case, is $500 just for that. Breeze also has, like, 9,000 screens that you have to customize,
Right.
but,
Well,
if we're using something like Snappic that has a more simplified UI, then it's a $350 charge. But my designer
gotcha.
still has to make all of those. It still needs to follow their brand guidelines, and, I mean, as well as I do, some
Yeah.
brands will even check your padding.
Yes. And that's one of the things. So, like, I'll just bring this up real quickly over here on another screen and so I can share. So one of the things that I think is really unique about Pictor is I've sat in your seat so many times and I've had this like client who's like, you have a privacy officer who says this button must be this color, or like,
Mhm.
yes, you need to use this font, or trying to explain to someone that unfortunately the way the software is written, we can't switch when we get the email address. It has to be at this point. So we've really, really focused on the modularity of these things.
Mm.
We have, let me just show something neat and something that's on the roadmap for the next few weeks that I'm really excited about, um, especially on the private event side, believe it or not. So, um,
All this to say that when I am branding things, everything has its own line item. So the email has a different price because, again, that takes a lot more work. Branding the template itself can also have a different price.
so this is our like launch area, but one of the things that I think is really neat, as I mentioned, we can move things around in different orders. So if we want to get the sharing information out of the way up front, we can do it in the top. But one of the things that I think is coolest is that we have global style settings for every screen cap. So you can go in and change the font, the title color, the subtitle, the body, buttons, whether there's a radius on the buttons, modals, backgrounds, branding on every single page. So this one little thing here, the ability to be able to put a logo on every single screen is that $500 line item that Kat's talking about. And that you can do in literally seconds here. So let's see, it must have
Yeah, and when my
your logo,
$500 one would kind of encompass all of that because it
all
would
that.
be
Yeah,
taking in the colors, the fonts, yeah.
cool. And you
But
can
that's
do
cool
it,
that you can do it all in app.
all in app and
Mhm.
quickly. Something else that I'm really excited about is we are working on global text as well. So right here, this event example that we're working with, which you can launch in one click, has about 60 different templates in it for all these different experiences, but they all have 2 lines of text on the template. So we're going to be adding a global text to this area. So if you have multiple lines of text, you can tokenize them and then essentially change it in one place. So going back to the bride, if she kept just changing her mind at the last second, we could change that and an ampersand on every single screen with 2 clicks
Nice.
versus going into all 60 templates. So that's something that I'm really excited about. For us, it's really been about like, how can we shave off the minutes going into a pre-event? In terms of data collection, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Do you want to tell folks how you handle
Yeah.
that?
Well, data collection is something that I think a lot of people do wrong, unfortunately, and the legal ramifications of it are pretty severe. As the photo booth industry as a whole hasn't been educated on how to properly collect data and information and how to resell it. That's actually an entire coaching call that I ended up doing with my lawyer, where he came in and kind of taught everyone. So for those of you who are in my group, you can go back and listen to that one. But the long story short of it is that you need to have proper disclaimers, and you need to tell people how you're going to be using their information and who's going to be using that information. In Canada, it's a little bit stricter, as it is in many parts of Europe as well, where we have to have a physical opt in. We can't just allow people to have the checkbox done. They have to physically check a box to say that they're opting in. So that's why we charge a lot of money to do this for our companies, because we can stop our photo booth from running. The cost of the person using the photo booth is their email and opting into the marketing. But we have to be very clear about that. And with the clients that we work with, we're involved with their legal, we're involved with, all of their privacy people, and we have to have all the right stuff in the right places. So we do charge a lot for data collection, and it is also the most valuable thing to them. If for a retail company to collect one email address, the average is between $4 and $6 per email. And thinking about hundreds of photos and emails that you can collect in a day, like that's a lot of money. That's a lot of ROI for them. We had one client recently, just a 30% increase in their data collection was huge for them. Like I was bummed because I was like, oh my God, we only did 30% more. And they were ecstatic. Like they
Yeah,
couldn't wait to take it back to their stakeholders. And I'm like, okay, I was pretty bummed about this. So it's big value, especially in the corporate world.
gotcha. Yeah, and I think just to give people an idea of, you mentioned like privacy officers, lawyers, all of those things. And something that I found to be a really big change was in COVID, when things started being virtual, it kind of
Hmm.
opened up people's eyes to the fact that photo booth companies have always been doing data collection, that perhaps faces were data, which they are. And in
Hmm.
the US, I don't know in Canadian law, and even with GDPR, these things are kind of like intentionally gray. And so it really depends on a specific privacy officer. We've had some people who are hell bent on like, you can't retain an email address. And then
Yeah.
we've had other people who are like, you can't email someone their photo because you can't have it. And you're like, well, you're hiring me to send someone their photo. So go talk to your colleague and figure this out internally. The other
Yeah.
thing that I think is really interesting is that most of the time, and I'd be really curious to hear how you handle this, we always try and preempt certain questions so that when they get to sent to legal, that the legal person is thinking about a flow of what we're about to do. Because if I've found, at least in the New York or American market, if there's one person who does not want to go back on their word, even if they're wrong, it's typically a corporate lawyer. So once they've made a determination, they don't care if it makes sense or doesn't make sense. And it's this absolutely crazy thing. We had an event recently with a big credit card company, who I shall not name, but it's one of the ones that is from America and is expressive about their name. And they literally kneecapped every single part of the photo booth, but still wanted the photo booth. And they were like, "Why won't you sign this?" And I was like, "Well, I've documented several emails in which I would be now admitting to being in breach of your contract, my contract, GDPR, all of these things." And so ultimately, what had to happen was I spent $4,000 or $5,000 within 8 hours of the event with our lawyer trying to figure out, because of course they waited till the last second to do this, trying to bully us, right? And ultimately, the agency hiring us signed paperwork that they would indemnify us of anything that happened,
Good.
because I was like, I'm just not going to show up. Like, I cannot work on this agreement. So this was a rare one where the agency was like, well, we'll just take the hit on this. Like, we all know nothing's going to happen. People want their photo. That's why they're lining up to take the photo. So,
Yeah, some of them go too
um,
far.
agreed. One other thing that we rolled out in Pictor, and a lot of Pictor is like very, very, very feature rich. And we're about to start doing a lot of user interviews and testing, because when you design a thing, you know where the button is. And what we're finding from folks is that even though we're very feature rich, some things could definitely be in better places. I think that's the nice way to say it. But we have already a bunch of data privacy stuff, like you mentioned. So auto
Mm.
scrub data, scrub survey data, and then a hard delete. So this can delete things literally as they are being sent. So you get an email and a photo. Once we send it to the end user, it's gone. And then we have a hard delete, which wipes everything but retains analytics. I know a lot of the other apps that we use, when you delete a photo, it deletes the analytics alongside it. And
Mhm.
like you mentioned, we live and die by the ROI. So if we can't show that people were photographed, obviously some issues.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's very cool.
And then what did you say? Did you mention the line item that you usually charge for something like that? I assume there's variations of that as well.
There is variations for it. I think it starts at 250 for, like, the most basic or data collection, and that's, like, using our standard, disclaimer and all that fun stuff. But, yeah, it can get expensive. I've had
Yeah.
to corporate, as you know, can get crazy. Like, we've had some clients that have said, like, "Oh, your servers must be in Canada." So then it's like we're having to build our own website domains and all this stuff to host the data, and it's just yeah, it's a lot sometimes. So that gets real expensive when they ask for that. Sometimes they're their own worst enemy,
Oh,
you know?
100%. But then it's like somehow our fault as a company that they're their own worst enemy. So, and
Yeah.
it's like, it's like, these are your rules, not ours. Like, so,
Yeah, that's
so I
true.
think we talked on a few things, but I just want to reiterate, like, if you were to say the difference between the 500 and the $5,000 event, is it the equipment, the skill, something else, education? Like, what would you say is like sort of the thing,
The cattle. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a lot. It's not just one thing, and that I think like many people who go into business, we don't there's no photo booth business school, or at
sure.
least not really, right? It's not like you don't go to university for this. Even if you go to university for business, they really don't teach you what it's like to start a real business. It's
No,
all theory that you can't even apply. But the biggest mistake that people do is they go and they're trying to go after the main like the market, what they consider the market, or what
right.
people will often say like my market can only do this. And it's because they're going after the biggest pool of people because they think that that's where they're going to make their money. And that's where they get into this whole competing on price thing, right? They're looking at their competitors who maybe have the same photo booth as them, and they're trying to just be like, okay, well, I'm going to price myself $20 less or exactly the same, but I'm going to have a prettier website. But what everyone's missing is nobody knows who their actual target audience is. And if you know who your target audience is, then you are going to know what those things are that light them up and that make them want to fork over your money, right? Or their money to you. And it's very specific. So we go after luxury clients. Our weddings have a minimum budget of $200,000. Like, we have not done weddings that are less than that in the past probably 2 or 3 years. And a $200,000 couple, very different than the DIY couple who is trying to, do it all themselves. A $200,000 couple probably have high stake jobs. They don't have time. They hired a planner. They want excellence. They want to worry about nothing, and they want to know that their guests are getting the absolute best of the best. It's all about experience. It's all about making things simple for them. And so you build packages around that. So one of the things that, yeah, I had an interesting conversation actually with one of my students the other day who was like, "Oh, I raised my price and I tripled it." And I said, "Okay, but what's different about your package?" "Oh, nothing. I just tripled my price." I'm like, that is not going to work. A, you're not targeting anyone different. You're targeting the same people, and they're going to see that price and think you're absolutely crazy. It's like trying to sell like a Louis Vuitton bag to someone who just wants a purse to hold their wallet. Like, they can go to
Right.
Walmart and get that, you know? They don't care about the Italian leather and hand stitched whatever. So if you're trying to just increase your prices without being able to line that up with someone who's willing to pay for it, that's where I see a lot of people fail, where they raise their prices blindly and then but are going after the same market. So being able to charge premium and have more profit and all of that is really understanding, do you have that client that is willing to pay that? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes. I've seen very few people that live in areas where they don't have varying levels of income and people who are willing to pay for things, and corporate, like a good, unless you live in like very middle of nowhere.
Right.
It's a big difference. And I think a lot of people feel that it's difficult, but once you really fundamentally understand that shift in your mind, it just opens up everything. And, we started like that. I was hyper focused on who I was going after. Back then, I was going after couples who actually cared about stylizing their photo booth, who cared
Hmm.
about good design on their template, and who cared about photo quality. Those
Hmm.
people were willing to pay double what other
Hmm.
people in my city were charging because they saw the value in that. And every year we've reinvented our ideal customer. Now we've honed it in more and more, but every 2 to 3 years we're still tweaking it. There's always little tweaks here and there that have to happen.
I think it's a really interesting industry because we do at Outsnack a ton of trade shows.
Mhm.
It's kind of our evergreen. They're not super sexy most of the time, but they keep the lights on, and then we get to do really cool other stuff. What's interesting about the ICP, the customer profile for a trade show, is sometimes it's the CMO, sometimes
Yeah.
it's the assistant to the CEO, sometimes it's someone who's in an agency. So it's always been very difficult for us to find that ICP and talk to them specifically. Any kind of like soul searching ways that you can recommend folks like begin to determine their ICP?
I mean, honestly, pretty much everyone in this room has their ICP staring right at them. It's in their books. And
Right.
if you go back and you look at your last year of business or however long you've been in business, you will see that there is going to be one shining light in your books. That one client that brought you the most amount of money was a dream to work with, and it lit you up inside. Maybe you only have 2 or 3 of these events on your books, but those are the ones that you need to just hyper focus on. And
Yes.
it's gonna take a year for
Yep.
you to see that change, like,
Yep.
we did a big jump in our ICP about 18 months ago, and it took the full year, sorry, 16 months, is that a year and a half? Yeah, 16 months ago, and it took a full year for us to start really seeing it, but the floodgates opened. The
Mhm.
minute that it happened, it just came like crazy. So, if you just consistently go after that market, you're gonna start to see the differences. And it doesn't really matter who it is, because I'm the same as you. Sometimes we deal with agencies, sometimes we're dealing directly with the company and it's a marketing person, and sometimes it's their intern who's coming to us and trying to, get the approvals in place. But at the end of the day, if you become that one main, what's the word, like expert in that field,
Mhm.
your name's gonna be everywhere.
Right.
So the CEO of the company is gonna know and drop your name to the marketing director, or it's gonna come across the marketing director's desk and they're gonna drop the name to whoever else on the team. You just need to continue to say the same thing over and over and over again to the point where you are going to be sick of yourself. Like if you
Yeah.
go to my LinkedIn profile, I am just preaching experiential marketing all day long. And like I can't even look at my LinkedIn profile because I'm like, I've said this so many times, but it just takes that one piece of content to resonate with that one person who then hits me up in my DMs.
Yeah, and that's sort of the Gary V method. It's like just yell a lot. I
A
think
lot,
a
a
lot, a
lot.
lot. Yeah.
The only
Um,
person sick of your marketing is you.
yeah, right? That's not entirely true. We occasionally get an unsubscribe. I have to imagine that they're they're not but yes, no, few and far between. And I think something that may be also very valuable, and I know it's malleable on a per case basis, but overall, we get no shortage of people saying, "Hey, you're charging X for this." Like we'll
Yeah.
lose a job, and we'll say, "Hey, in order to do better in the future, like, can you let us know why we lost this?" And people who are nice enough to write back, 99% of the time, it's like, we put a bid in for seven to $15,000, and like, oh, we found a guy who's going to do it for $800, and you're like, okay, well, clearly we're not the right fit if you don't see there's probably a difference between those two. But when you have someone who's flat out says, why are you worth more than the next guy or next company? Like, do you have a go to? Like, what's, how do you
We
respond? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. We definitely don't get it as much as we used to because we try to get that in the front of the
Right.
so like when we're presenting our proposals, we are highlighting the differences that come with our packages. And it's more so being like, we've already thought of all the things that you're going to ask us questions about, right?
Right.
Now our problem is that is price still comes down to it mostly on the client side. So like when we're dealing with an agency, for example, they wanna work with us, but sometimes the client, because of budget reasons, will veto it and maybe go with another company, in which case we see that client come back within a year, and that's why we always make sure that we leave every door open because
Sure.
sometimes it's not your client who is making that final decision. There's another stakeholder that's essentially the gate, the agency is the gatekeeper, but the client is the ultimate decision maker in the end. It's the agency's job and your job to try and give your messaging all the way to that end client, but sometimes it's just not going to happen. It's their loss. And the agencies generally tend to know that they're going to have to work harder working with another vendor. And I can't even tell you the amount of times that we've had an agency partner call us and be like, I have a photo booth here it's not, the guy doesn't even know how to turn it on. Like, is there anything you can do? And I'm like, no, you hired another company. I
Yeah.
cannot help that other company.
Yeah, it's wild how it's like I don't know. I was talking about this internally when we were working with like our support team on the Pictor side. And I was like, no, you have to understand at an event, if something's going wrong, you turn into like event triage mode and it's like you're willing to do anything. Like that person
Yeah.
later when they come out of that, they're like, oh my God, I called Cat. Like that's so embarrassing. But like when you're trying to fix a thing, you're trying to
Yeah.
fix a thing.
Anything.
But I think that's a really nice segue into like if you're charging $5,000 versus $500, what's like the one thing you can't mess up? Like,
The experience,
right.
like you need to have backups. We did a six-figure contract not that long ago. And I am not kidding you, Nick. We had backups to the backup plans. We
Hmm.
thought of everything that could go wrong and we used every single one of those backups because we realized that we didn't have control over a lot of things that we normally do. So we
Sure.
needed to be prepared for that. And the client came back to us being like, we have never worked with somebody who literally can just problem solve on a dime and not have downtime. I think we were down for like 5 minutes at most at any point.
Yeah.
But everything that got thrown to us, we were just thinking five steps ahead because when you're charging hundreds of thousands of dollars for an activation, like they're expecting the best of the best and you need to be able to deliver that. Now, if we do it like on a $5,000 event, bring your backup cables,
Yeah.
test your backdrops before you go to events, test your events for God's sakes. And if you're too far away from your warehouse, bring another printer if you can, bring a
Right.
backup camera.
Right.
Whatever can make your event fail, you should be prepared for, right? And I think that that is giving people that comfort of knowing that when they spend 5,000 or $100,000 with us, that they are going to get what they're paying for. And what they see on our website is what we can produce.
Totally. I think that's great. And then you talked about those redundancies. I think people don't realize how a cable can literally just stop working one day. And it's like you could have the same cable for 10 years, and one day that cable has gone to a better place. So, yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And like most of those cables are dirt cheap. So, just to have a second set is just so easy. Like, obviously, a printer or a whole photo booth, pricey. Yeah, we were troubleshooting a DSLR thing the other day, and everything's coming in, everything's working, the camera's registering, but it's not firing. And ultimately, it was just like the cable for whatever reason. And so we swapped it out. Um, cool. I know we're getting towards the end, so I do want to open up to questions. But before we do
Mhm.
that, Kat, is there any last sort of like we talked a little bit about that response, but if there's like one thing people can do, because knowing your ICP, that's like a real soul searching thing. And I do have, maybe we'll do another webinar on that because now with AI stuff, like we've been able to connect the dots on things that we had never been able to connect before.
Yeah.
And that's like a whole conversation in and of itself. But if there's like one actionable things, when people get off this call today, they can spend 20 minutes doing X. What is that thing?
I'm gonna go back to the ICP. I know it is a
Yeah.
lot of soul searching, but, like, I want you to look at, like, what is the lowest hanging fruit that you have right now,
Yeah.
right? What client I know you guys are all thinking of that one client that brought you so much joy to work with. Just focus on doing more of that, because whatever you focus on is what you're gonna bring into your company. That's the easiest thing I can say. It's part of
Yeah.
manifestation, part business rules, part woo-woo, but it's the truth.
Yes, and so I'm glad you pushed back. People often want that silver bullet, but there is no silver bullet. But you did give a really easy way into that. And you said two things that I think are really important. One, for someone like myself, when you run a business, it's very hard to ever feel, for me at least, like, oh, I've succeeded. Because by
Mhm.
the time you've succeeded with one thing, something else is on fire, whether it's an email or a printer cable going bad or any of these things. There's very few moments where you get to stop and really celebrate the win. So external validation for me is like looking through my list and be like, oh wow, okay, these are the 10 people we did, 5-figure events with this last month. And then you said something that I think is really important. Did I like working with them? Right?
Mhm.
One of the nicest things about having a business that's smoothly or as smooth as it can is you get to pick and choose your clients. And there are definitely clients, you know it when you're taking their money, you're like, I'm going to regret this, but we need to
Mhm.
do payroll this month, or I'm going, it's like whatever it may
Yep.
be. And then the opposite is true, where you're just like, I would have done that for free, even though it was so much work because they sent a thank you note. They like called out all the things. They read the emails we sent them instead of literally responding to an email saying, hey, when are you sending that proposal? But you responded to the proposal email. That happened the other day.
Yeah.
We had a person being like, I've been waiting 5 hours for the proposal, but they responded to the
Nice.
proposal. And yeah, it was very funny. So I think that
Yeah.
that's great. So I think our homework for everyone here, and we're going to check your homework next week. Pull up your CRM. If you don't have one, pull up your equivalent of a CRM and just look at your highest priced. And then off the top of your head, actually, you know what? I would say do it the other way around. Before you look at your CRM, write down the list of the 3 people you like working the most with last year and then look at your CRM, sort by highest numbers, see if they're the same people, and then see what the common threads are between them. Hop on LinkedIn, see if they all have the same job title, see if they have connections between them on LinkedIn, see if there are other people like them that they're connected with on LinkedIn. So,
Mhm.
anything you want to add to that?
No, that's it. That is the one thing that they can do today that is gonna fundamentally change their business going forward. You just need to focus on that.
Sounds good. So, in the last 5 or 10 minutes we have, if anyone does have questions, there's one in the Q&A already, so we'll drop that. While we're waiting for folks to drop some stuff in there, Kat, do you want to tell people how they can learn more about your offerings or download some of your
Yeah.
content?
Well, I'm most active on my Instagram account, which is at Photo Booth Mastery, and that's where I drop lots of content. I do lots of stories. So if you want to learn about what crazy photo booth job I'm doing right now, or whatever random Lego decorations I'm also making, my whole house is decorated with Lego this year. It's on there. So at Photo Booth Mastery, and then my website is photoboothmastery.catalinabloch.com. So you can check it out there as well. And we actually have our live call tomorrow. So
Cool.
we'll be doing a call then. Yeah.
Sounds good. So, if you want us, we'll send that out with a recap of this to everyone so they can check that out. And if you want to just offline with us, send us the information for tomorrow. If people, is that open to everyone or is that just for members?
No, it's for members only,
Okay.
but, you know, we've
But you have time to be a member between now and tomorrow.
yeah, you really do.
Okay, cool. So we'll send that out. So
Yeah.
we have one question that's come in, and I will
Mhm.
read it. And this is from Mitch Miller. Hey, Mitch, thank you for joining us. With having effectively a single price list, how do you account for, i.e., charge for the extra work that often comes with a corporate client? Example, a recent event of ours, we spent quite a bit of extra time during setup to make sure lighting was right, and even changed up our normal lighting to accommodate the set they'd built. That feels like something that's hard to quantify ahead of time, but folks probably wouldn't choose extra effort line item for 500.
Yeah, so that's actually built into our anchor price. We have a 3-hour setup for many of our booths. So if it's something like a video booth, for example, or if there is a build out, we have 3 hours that we know are paid for. It fluctuates though, right? Some events only take 2 hours to set up, and some events are going to take 4 or 5 hours to set up. For the more cookie cutter, let's call it like under $5,000. Well, let's call it under 8,000. Those ones we kind of just balance it out. So because we have those 3 hours built into our anchor price, we don't worry about it. When it comes to those bigger ones, where if we know that they have a build out, then I will usually build in an extra couple of hours. But we don't break out our pricing. When we send our pricing, it's one number and it tells them what's included. Because
I
what
get
I
it.
found was when you create a line item, they're going to pluck it out. And I'm not here for that. I know what you need.
Right. That's great. And I think that's what they're paying for is your brain. When they push back and they say, can we get this line item out? How do you respond?
I tell them that that's not really how we work. If they ever like I did have one client in my 12-ish years of photo boothing at this point, I've maybe had 3 clients push back on it. This last one in particular was a 6-figure client that needed it itemized between equipment, human time, and consumables. And I explained to him like that's not really how this works, right?
Right.
We are estimating traffic for many of these things. And so we price it based on what the maximum output is that you can have because I need to purchase those things like
Right.
consumables, for example.
Right.
And so I will line item maybe 1 or 2 things if they absolutely need us to, like, for example, an extra hour. Or if they want, an extra hour of prints or something like that, then I will give them what the per hour for additional time is. But when they ask us for a reduction in pricing because they're trying to get within a certain budget, we rework it on our end and we'll remove things from their package. But I
Interesting.
do
Okay.
not line item anything.
Yeah, that's great. And I think we've gotten to a point, and I love that. And I think we're looking for different ways we can work in the new year to make our office life easier, our event life easier. I don't know if like I feel like the tides turn. Right now we're working with a lot of agencies. We last 2 years we're working a lot directly in house, and the
Mhm.
agency model is an interesting one, right? Because they are in this weird spot where the less they spend, the more they make, right? So that's one
Yeah.
thing. We've had a lot of people who really need to see line items and they want to see things price by price, and then we have other clients who are just like, just what you said, don't give us a line item because I have to go and get my stakeholder to sign off on this and they're going to start picking it apart. This is what I want. Um, which are you still using? This is like a little bit of insider ball because we've talked about it before, but are you still using Pixify?
Funny enough, I'm actually in the middle of moving away from them. But I
Gotcha.
actually ended up I was really excited about Booth Books version 2, and
Yes.
it is going to be amazing. It's not ready in time for me, unfortunately.
Oh,
And so I'm building my own CRM as we speak. I just came out of another meeting about that. So,
interesting. Are you
yeah.
using an AI tool like a Lovable or are you like building your own CRM?
Oh, no, we're using like a foundational,
Got
we're
it.
using Go High Level to build
Okay.
out our
Cool.
CRM, but
Cool.
it has everything I want and then some. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Neat, 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 neat. I too am very excited about the new Booth book. We've been
Yeah.
waiting to leave Pixify for quite some time. I'm very excited about moving in there. We do our CRM stuff, the meat of it, the client relations in HubSpot, but
Yeah.
HubSpot doesn't have the photo booth
No.
brains, right?
No.
And so historically, we've kind of hacked Pixify to do it. And the reason why I asked about Pixify is there's no easy way to give that just one number when you're assembling line items. So that was my insider Q&A question.
Yeah,
Cool.
but for anyone who is looking for a CRM, please check out Boothbook version 2. Like, it is going to change the photo booth CRM industry, and, I unfortunately am what I need is more than that, but for, like, 99% of the photo booth world, it's gonna be amazing for them, so check it out.
Yes. And not to make it an infomercial for Boothbook, but I
I know.
also agree. I'm actually putting this out here just so that we make sure it happens. But I'm onboarding tomorrow with that team, and I'm going to be a beta user of the new
Yeah, I
Boothbook.
am a
So
beta
very
user too. I
excited.
love it, and
It's
that's what I'm
awesome, right?
saying, it's so
Yeah.
good. It's just
It
not
has
ready
so
for me, and I
many
need it now.
so many cool things in it that I'm not going to be the one to tell you, but hopefully we can get the Boothbook team on in the new year to show you some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Kat, do you
Yeah.
have time for 2 more questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. Do you price based on half days, less than 3 or 4 hours, or full days? And this is coming in from Rick.
Great question. We have a 3-hour minimum. So whether you hire us for an hour or 3 hours, it doesn't matter. It's a 3-hour
Same.
price. But we don't do half day or full days. I know a lot of people who do that, and that's great. For us, though, we bill by the hour. So, like, on top of that, so we have a 3-hour base, and then we build up from there. And it just gives us flexibility with our clients too, because the blanket cost to me doesn't make sense. I know it's a model that works for many people, but
Yeah.
not for us, unfortunately.
We're the same. We have our 3-hour minimum. And I think one of the things that the other homework I would give to people is to literally figure out what it costs you to do an event. Because the
Oh my
amount of
god,
times
yeah.
we've heard people who book an event for literally less money than it would cost us to produce the event. So in New York City, during the holiday season, just to put it in perspective, it costs us $300 to send someone one direction in an Uber that would normally cost $40. Right. So, and
Oh,
that's
wow.
something that we're like going back to the client to be like, oh, by the way, we weren't thinking. Right. So,
Yeah.
like, you got to eat that. Right. So, you got to charge for those things during the holiday season. We had someone come to us who wants something on New Year's Eve. And I just said, out of the gate, like, New Year's Eve is a logistical nightmare. Are you willing to spend more than $20,000? If you are not, like, we cannot do it. Like, it's just, I need to hire 4 people to work over 3 days, which is usually the most important days of the year to people. So
Yep,
cool.
I agree.
Rick, any follow-ups on that? Or you good?
The one thing I will say to your point about, while Rick is thinking if there's any follow-up questions, I have a profit calculator on my website that's free that helps
Hmm.
you figure out what it costs you to go out. Because this, again, is one of the number one mistakes people do in, like,
Yes.
this pricing based on their market, is that they don't know their depreciation, their cost to run their business, and they're going out and actually losing money. But because they have cash in hand, they think they're making money, but they
Yes.
don't realize that it's actually leaking out the other way.
Yes. And that's the other thing is like someone who, photo booths get used up and you got to replace them. So you got to factor that into every event. People also don't take into account the team time before the event. And
Yep.
so for an event, like, you're looking at 10 hours probably of
Mhm.
team time pre-event, and that's got to be charged somehow, et cetera. So cool.
Yeah,
We have
absolutely.
one last question, and I don't know that we'll be able to answer it, but I'm happy to throw it to you.
Sure.
If I am using Check Cherry, is it worth looking to change to Boothbook?
Yeah, this is a great question. If Check Cherry is serving you, then please do not give yourself the headache of moving CRMs. You know, a lot of times I was on Pixify for 11 years at this point,
Same.
almost 12. And trust me, I didn't want to make the switch, but we have outgrown it, and Pixify was never built for photo booths. So if you have a CRM and it's working for you, don't make the switch now if you don't need to, right? When you get to the point that you need to, it's going to be painful whether you do it now or later. So might as well save yourself the pain for when you absolutely need to do it.
The
That would be
only
my
thing
best.
I will The only thing I will say is use a little magic 8 ball or a crystal ball to know 6 months before you need to make that change,
Yeah,
because it's going to take you 6 months. We onboarded
for sure.
into HubSpot in December of 2024. I will say, where we were going into 2026, we've almost got it fully set up now. Like literally
Good.
2 years to
I
get
know.
all of these systems moving. And like we just started our newsletter, which now connects to our sales cycle, which now it's like it's going to be great, but it's taken a long time. Rick, follow-up question. When do you know when you need to? And I'm going to say need to change anything in your business, I think is the best question. Kat, do you have any feedback on that? Because I can,
So, yeah, for us, it was the fact that, okay, so funny enough, what happened was that I had hired an operations person and that person went on mat leave. She had trained her own replacement who actually quit the day that my right hand was going on vacation. So I was left by myself leaving to go to Mexico where I was supposed to go and be bored because this is how I plan my business, right? Anyways, so here I am having to take on during the busiest time all of our leads coming in, and I hadn't worked a lead in I don't know how long. Thankfully, we have SOPs for the SOPs, and everything is as automated as humanly possible. But even still, in doing that, I realized that there was a lot of redundancies that were happening, a lot of manual stuff that I knew could be automated if we use a better system. So at that moment, I realized we have outgrown that system that we
yeah,
had band-aid together to make it work for us because back then there was no photo booth CRMs.
yeah,
And there's just things like proposals. I need something that can make a pretty proposal, not just a one pager with a button. I need things that are going to have smart automations in them so that it can rank my leads for me. It can tell me the probability of closing them. It can show me a pipeline, with how much revenue I can potentially do in like
yeah.
what's my forecasting. I'm doing it all manually right now. So this change is going to be painful for us, but it's going to save me probably 2 salaries in doing this. So not that I'm reducing my salaries, it just will save me from having to hire 2 people.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I get into this conversation with AI all the time. Is people are like, "Oh, you can start firing people and use AI," and I'm like, "No, I can teach my team how to use AI," and it's like we got 8 extra people all of a sudden.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that's like, think about all of the skills that people do. Chris from Boothbook was on a few weeks ago, and he talked about the time audit, which is like it's a total pain in the butt to do, but I love it. I always stop doing it about halfway through the week, but even if you do a half week, that's great. Set your phone timer to go off every 15 minutes and write down what you're doing in a spreadsheet. And then you'll see all your repeating patterns and you get your whole team to do this. And then ultimately, those are the things you're like, okay, what can we automate? What can we not automate? How can we do this with the CRM? How come we're using so much time sending this one template? It's a template, right? So
Mhm.
all of those things. Roy asked about a different CRM. Um,
Which
I
one?
haven't used it. The question is, what do you think of HoneyBook CRM?
I hate HoneyBooks. I'm sorry. I'm gonna be very blunt about HoneyBooks. HoneyBooks is pretty, and it is great for beginners, but it lacks fundamental features like adding a photo in email. I get lit up when people are like, "I'm on HoneyBooks." I'm like, "It is great to start. Don't get me wrong, but you are going to grow out of it." It lacks so much, and it's because they're trying to serve as many people as possible,
Yeah,
and
that's
that's the
actually
problem.
so great callback to sort of tie this all together. There's that adage, if you're trying to make everybody your customer, nobody's your customer. So
Yeah.
going back to that ICP, in our industry, at least at OutSnap, we're not lucky enough to have one individual ICP. So we have a handful of them and we talk to them in different channels in different ways. And with algorithmic stuff, I could go on for days about how much I hate algorithmic stuff. The good news with algorithmic stuff is they will find the people. So now on your social feeds, you can talk to 5 ICPs, and those 5 ICPs are going to get the content for them. It's pretty interesting on
Yeah.
that side.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts, Kat, before we wrap up?
No, I mean, no. So many, but also no. Like I could talk about photo booth stuff for days and hours and don't overthink it. A lot of times I find business owners are pulled in so many directions and that is their downfall is that they're trying to
Yeah,
wear all the hats and do all the things when really there's 1 or 2 things in your business that you could be focusing on right now that is going to make you more profitable, more
sure.
efficient and help you grow. So what are those 2 things,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
focus
yeah.
on that.
And I think it's interesting too. And I think a lot of the other photo booth softwares that exist have really thought extensively about what the end user experience is. What is the person at the event going to walk away with? At
Yeah.
Pictor, we've spent so much time doing that 15-minute challenge and figuring out what we're spending our time on. How can
Mhm.
we automate those things? So, like that one global text thing or the global styling, like
Yeah.
those are the things that we've built into Pictor. The last thing I will say, I always like to say this before we wrap up, is as I mentioned, we are a photo booth company and we built Pictor. We've interviewed a lot of other photo booth companies. So we have a general idea of what photo booth companies need. But similar to what Kat was saying about CRMs, all these companies change and evolve over time. So we've put in all these things for what Outsnapped has needed for the last 10 years and what the companies we've interviewed have needed for the last 10 years, but we don't know what your company needs. So pop into the note board and you can add any requests that we don't already have. We actually have to go through this because we've shipped so many of these already. And then we have support. The premium accounts come with 24-hour phone emergency support. Please don't call Wolf. Be the boy who called Wolf. If it's an emergency, someone will wake up in the middle of the night and help you. If it is not an emergency, please respect our support sleeping time. But for the free accounts, you can expect feedback within 24 hours. For the paid accounts, 2 to 4 hours. And then the premiums have that emergency phone number. Like anything else, set up your first event in advance, and we're here to help you with all of those things. So thank you, Kat, so much. I'm going to put you on the spot and just say, this was so much fun. Can we get you back sometime next in Q1 or Q2 of
Anytime.
next year? Awesome. Cool. Everybody save up your questions and have a really happy new year, whichever holidays you celebrate and or don't celebrate. I hope every day is good for everyone. We'll be back the second week of January with the next show and tell. We will recap this one, send it out with the links that Kat is going to share with us so you have access to all of those details. Kat, is the pricing calculator available to folks who are not members?
Yeah, it's free on my website. It's right on my
Awesome. Can
front
you,
page.
great,
Yeah,
share a
I'll
link
send
with
you a
us
link.
because I think that's something that's so invaluable for people to really stop and think about the things that cost your business moolah. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you, everyone. Happy
Absolutely.
New
Thank you
Year.
so much for having me. Bye.
Yep. Bye.